Good evening, I'm Peter Mansbridge, and this is The National. United Airlines finally apologizes for its not-so-friendly skies.
Oh my God, look at what you did to him!
Can it recover from that? The U.S. lands a delegation in Moscow set for a showdown.
I would be real reluctant to take Trump on if I were an adversary of the United States.
But Sean Spicer gives maximum offense at home. Plus, Canadians feeling hemmed in by Freedom 55 aim for much longer.
Oh, I'm going to go until I drop, man. I love working.
Well, it took a worldwide backlash and a dramatic drop in stock price. But today, 2 full days after a Kentucky man was dragged off an overbooked United Airlines flight, the company finally sounded contrite. The CEO apologized unreservedly this time, but it came too late to neutralize the public relations disaster or the social media onslaught. Jacqueline Henson has the story.
We're United Airlines. You do what we say, when we say, and there won't be a problem.
Whoever said there was no such thing as bad publicity was wrong.
If we say you fly, you fly. If not, tough.
From late night spoofs to social media and mock United Airlines mottos, even one for a rival airline. But the original video isn't funny at all.
None of us could believe that it would get to that point of violence.
The other passengers were just berating the employees, saying things like, you should be ashamed of yourself.
Well, I found
a statement from United CEO apologizing for what he called re-accommodating customers was widely criticized. Add to that a leaked internal memo from the CEO defending his employees, saying they followed established procedures. I also emphatically stand behind all of you, he said. Meanwhile, others in the industry are questioning why this even happened in the first place.
They already knew they were overbooked. So then why didn't they, not board the last 10 people perhaps, rather than fill up the airplane and go through all this grief?
Now on China's version of Twitter, there are calls for a boycott of United in a market that's already crucial to the airline. United stock fell in trading today, at times wiping hundreds of millions of dollars off the company's value. And there are demands in the U.S. for a congressional hearing, even sparking reaction from the White House.
To watch a human being get dragged down an aisle with their head banging off armrests and not think that it could have been handled better, I would assume that we could probably all agree on that.
The thing is, the airline, whose real motto is fly the friendly skies, has been accused of being unfriendly before.
You broke my Taylor guitar.
Dave Carroll had to make his own viral video to get United to pay for his broken guitar. This latest controversy, he says, shows the airline hasn't learned much.
My experience was that they had a ways to go, and it seems like maybe they still have a ways to go yet.
Finally today, after all that criticism, United CEO released another statement. This time, he called what happened horrific, said the company takes full responsibility, and promised it will never happen again. Jacqueline Hanson, CBC News, Toronto.
Canada's transportation minister says he has imposed new rules on some flights to Canada, not about bumping passengers, but about security. But that's about all he would say.
I will only tell you that those measures are now in place, and they are from different airports where there are flights coming to Canada, and it is based on our evaluation of risk. And for obvious reasons, I can't tell you on which flights and in which places. I will not tell you that information because it's important not to make that public.
Garneau says the government has done things like this in the past for flights coming from Asia, Africa, and South America. He did say that the measures do not involve any new restrictions on electronics in airplane cabins. America's response to the recent Syrian gas attack was a dominant topic in Washington again today, although it was Press Secretary Sean Spicer himself who ended up generating headlines all over this clumsy condemnation of the Assad regime.
Someone as despicable as Hitler, who didn't even sink to the using chemical weapons.
Except, of course, that Hitler did. Journalists quickly gave Spicer the opportunity to clarify his comments.
Quote, Hitler didn't even sink to the level of using chemical weapons. What did you mean by that?
Thank you. I appreciate that. There was not he brought him into the Holocaust Center. I understand that. But I'm saying in the way that Assad used them, where he went into towns, dropped them down to innocent into the middle of towns, it was brought to, so the use of it, and I appreciate the clarification there. That was not the intent.
Spicer later apologized and issued a formal statement of clarification. In it, he said he was not trying to lessen the horrors of the Holocaust and that he was referring to Syria's practice of dropping chemical weapons on cities during airstrikes. Syria also monopolized talk at the G7 foreign ministers meeting in Italy. Support for the recent U.S. military strike is strong, despite a consensus on where we go from here. Tonight, U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson has already gone to his next big meeting in Russia. And as Susan Ormiston reports, he won't likely get the warm welcome he once did.
Rex Tillerson, just a few years ago a friend of Russia, has arrived in Moscow with a patently unfriendly message. Tillerson says Russia failed to ensure, as it promised, that Syria would stop using chemical weapons.
It is unclear whether Russia failed to take this obligation seriously or Russia has been incompetent. But this distinction doesn't much matter to the dead.
The White House is now blaming Russia for covering up the chemical attack, for using, quote, false narratives to confuse the world. But the U.S. Defense Secretary wouldn't say if Russia was complicit.
It was very clear that the Assad regime planned it, orchestrated it, and executed it. And beyond that, we can't say right now.
The Syrian base hit by those U.S. missiles a week ago is again operational, and Russia still won't accept that Syria ordered the gas attack. Today, President Putin added a stunning claim that another chemical attack is planned by Syria's enemies, targeting Damascus, which will then be used to frame Assad. Not a promising start, while the rhetoric rises in America.
Quit having your head in the sand. Putin's a war criminal. Assad's a war criminal. They're birds of a feather.
The Trump administration, with Secretary Tillerson, is trying to shame Russia, saying it's lining up with the wrong side: Syria, Iran, North Korea. But the Obama team tried the same thing. Secretary Kerry used almost the same words 2 years ago with no success. It didn't move Moscow. Russia's allegiance to Syria for its own purposes is long and deep and won't be budged just because the U.S. says it's hanging with the wrong crowd. This Russia watcher sees only a sliver of hope for anything positive.
Russia will not take any ultimatums, and we will be really on the edge of major disaster if Tillerson insists of Russia giving up on Assad.
Tillerson's personal history as an oil executive dealing in Russia and getting that badge of friendship could help when he meets tomorrow with Foreign Minister Lavrov. But notably, the man who smiled at him back then hasn't agreed to meet with Tillerson yet. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Toronto.
Canada's foreign minister is also attending the G7 meeting in Italy. Today, Chrystia Freeland echoed the Prime Minister's recent statements on regime change in Syria and took a shot at Moscow's foreign policy. In an interview with the BBC, Freeland said that a final peaceful outcome for Syria cannot include Assad remaining in power. And as for the Russians and their support of Bashar al-Assad, Freeland said Canada is looking very carefully at additional sanctions. And as if the Syrian problem wasn't pressing enough, North Korea is threatening the U.S. with a nuclear attack. Paul Hunter has more on the escalating tension in that part of the world.
As the U.S. Navy heads toward the Korean Peninsula, and as the U.S. and South Korea take part in their biggest ever military exercises, North Korea is firing back. Any sign of U.S. aggression, it said via state media, may bring a nuclear attack on America. We will take the toughest counteraction against the provocateurs, said this state newsreader. And though the White House underlines North Korea is not yet capable of a nuclear attack, it's a clear ratcheting of tensions. And coming in the days after that U.S. strike on Syria, which caught the world by surprise, this caution today from a Republican senator.
I think this strike was a game changer. There's a new sheriff in town. I hope North Korea is watching. Let me tell you this. If I were you, I would be real reluctant to take Trump on if I were an adversary of the United States.
And Donald Trump weighed in himself today on Twitter. North Korea is looking for trouble, he wrote, adding if China doesn't help resolve it, the U.S. will solve the problem without them.
The last thing we want to see is a nuclear North Korea that threatens the coast of the United States, or for that matter, any other country and any other set of human beings. So we need stability in that region, and I think he has put them clearly on notice.
The White House says Trump is keeping all options open on North Korea, underlining that, as with Syria, if he acts, it will be, as the White House put it, decisive and proportional. Paul Hunter, CBC News, Washington.
Coming up, Duncan McHugh looks at retirement in Canada, 21st century style. Plus, we take you inside a most exclusive school.
It didn't matter that she didn't physically, strenuously resist the sexual activity. She said no.
Teaching judges the ABCs of the law of consent. The government has introduced a bill to hike fees on hundreds of federal services. The new Services Fees Act is included in its omnibus budget bill. It would automatically trigger annual fee increases at the level of inflation on what you pay to renew your passport, for example, or to get a fishing license. The new law is scheduled to come into effect next April 1st. Voters in British Columbia already knew they'd be going to the polls May 9th, but today was the formal kickoff of the provincial campaign. And already there are issues bubbling to the surface that could affect Canadians outside of BC too. Chris Brown explains.
Bonjour. Bonjour. As the BC election begins, it's probably advantage Christy Clark. She's the incumbent premier leading a province with a strong economy and a party with a 4-election winning streak.
Having a job and getting a better job, making sure that your kids have an opportunity to get a great job, all that's how you look after the people that you love. And I think that that's what people are going to be making their choice about.
I'm the new candidate for the BC Liberal Party in this riding.
But a lengthy incumbency can also cause voter fatigue, and there are lingering scandals too, especially over fundraising. So, NDP leader John Horgan sees an opening to win, something New Democrats have only ever done 3 times here.
This is not as good as it gets. We can do better than this, and we will do better than this.
Christy Clark, she's $300,000 richer thanks to her wealthy donors.
The NDP has hammered the integrity theme, but has appeared uncertain on some of the key economic issues, such as pipelines. The BC Liberals have endorsed Ottawa's approval of Kinder Morgan's oil pipeline from Alberta. John Horgan says he'll kill it, without precisely saying how, setting up a showdown with his NDP cousins in Alberta, says this election watcher.
If they do, it's going to set up quite a showdown between the BC government, the Alberta government, and the federal government. It could even affect how we do federalism in Canada, because it'll be a nasty challenge.
Not to be overlooked are BC's Greens.
I'm really excited.
Leader and climate scientist Andrew Weaver holds the party's only seat, but surrounded by candidates, including 6 with PhDs, Weaver says the Greens have moved beyond the fringe.
Do people feel that they are being served by the same tired choice between the BC Liberals and the BC NDP?
The NDP felt it had the last election in the bag, ran a safe, careful campaign, and blew it. So this time the party says expect lots of attack ads and an all-out assault on Christy Clark's record. Chris Brown, CBC News, Vancouver.
It may feel like a lifesaver when you're driving down a slippery, icy highway, but all that salt is doing nothing good for North America's lakes. In fact, even the smallest amount on a road not even that close to a freshwater lake can turn fresh waters to brine. But there are solutions. Margot McDermott explains.
It's hard to see a downside to spring melting, but all this runoff is making our lakes sick.
Any road salt that you see being applied is eventually going to end up in our waters.
A new study of more than 370 lakes in eastern North America shows they're getting saltier. Ontario's Lake Simcoe is an example. It's now 5 times saltier than it was 40 years ago, which is very bad news for the ecosystem.
Most species are adapted to extremely fresh waters, and so as you start adding salt, this just stresses out anything living in the water.
This huge pile is an example of the problem. It's snow that was removed from Ottawa streets this winter. It contains salt and all kinds of nasty stuff. The issue is what to do with the water that melts from it.
You can hear and see the water coming in from the pile of snow.
Municipalities like Ottawa are grappling with the problem. It's one of the few Canadian cities with special facilities to store snow. In the spring, the melting water is diverted into holding ponds.
But we want to mitigate the impacts to the environment from the chloride that's in the salt. So the meltwater storm pond captures some of that, dilutes some of that salt water before it can actually, seep into the environment.
Most North American cities are cutting back on road salt. Some are even mixing it with beet juice or brine left over from making cheese. But that only goes so far. Half of all the salt that's draining into lakes is being spread by homeowners and private businesses. A group trying to change that habit says a lot of people are unrealistic about winter.
There's an expectation that people can drive in the winter with a bare pavement and they can walk into the store and not have to step over any snowbanks, and the sidewalk will be free and safe so that they can wear their summer shoes in order to do their business and basically not prepare for the winter.
The study predicts if this keeps up, about 10,000 lakes in eastern North America are at risk of getting saltier and sicker. Margaret McDermott, CBC News, Ottawa.
There are calls tonight for a province-wide investigation into the sex education curriculum in Alberta after a controversial video was shown to high school students in Red Deer.
The presentation was inappropriate and misleading, using incorrect information, and quite frankly, frightening.
The video compares abortion to the killings at Auschwitz during the Second World War. A local anti-abortion group played the video to grade 10 students. The Red Deer Catholic School Board has apologized and says it will now screen presentations by outside groups more carefully. A CBC News investigation into home insurance has found that some victims of domestic violence can be left without coverage even after a devastating fire. As investigative correspondent Diana Swain tells us, what they're entitled to depends on where they live.
There's debris everywhere, so yep, that's it.
This is Terry Lynn Robinson's burned out bedroom. When she asked her husband for a divorce, he set their house on fire.
And I was actually over here, and I was packing his clothes here, and he lit the bed on fire there, and it is very lucky that I got out.
This bedroom, this house, a far cry now from how it looked when she lived here with her husband, daughter, and son. After the fire, the insurance company went in to assess the damage and left the house a rotting mess. For nearly a year, it's done nothing, leaving Robinson carrying a mortgage on a house she can't live in.
The insurance just took things and just moved everything around and just left, you know. They wouldn't let me in to clean anything. That's what everything looks like now.
Her husband was convicted of arson and last month sentenced to jail time. But her insurance company, Allstate, has refused to pay out. That's because she lives in Ontario, one of the provinces where a claim can be denied if one of the people named on the policy intentionally sets the fire. Several other provinces have passed legislation forcing insurance companies to pay out in a case like this. Lawyer Scott Stanley has dealt with similar cases in BC, where the laws have recently been changed to give victims some protection.
I mean, these are the worst of the worst cases, and nothing, I mean, after your home has been burned down tragically, how could life get much worse except for if your insurance company doesn't help you out and then you end up being homeless. So the impact was profound.
We approached Allstate about her story. The company says it will now review its practices to ensure fair application of laws across all jurisdictions. It also seems to be willing to take a second look at Robison's claim, which for her could finally be a bit of good news.
Just tired of being punished over and over and over for something that I just didn't do.
But here's something to remember. Even if Allstate changes its rules, it's just one company, leaving many others able to deny a claim based on where a person lives. Diana Swain, CBC News, Toronto.
A Canadian man accused in that huge hack of Yahoo emails has been denied bail. Karim Baratov was arrested in Ontario last month after U.S. authorities charged him for hacking, espionage, and other crimes. They say the 22-year-old poses a high flight risk and has ties to Russian spies. His extradition hearing is not yet set. And an American woman pleaded guilty today for helping to plot an attack at a Halifax mall on Valentine's Day in 2015. Lindsay Suvanarath and 2 others planned on using rifles and gas bombs to kill shoppers. Her sentencing is set for October. The CBC issued an apology today after just 3 episodes of a new docudrama called Canada, the Story of Us. It's a historical mini-series meant to celebrate the 150th anniversary of Confederation. But it's being criticized by some for being inaccurate, offensive, and incomplete. Stephanie Van Kempen has more.
The new CBC series, Canada, the Story of Us, set out to educate. Instead, it offended some Canadians, both for what it included, the negative portrayal of French Canadians, and naming Quebec as Canada's birthplace.
It is the first permanent European settlement in Canada.
And what it left out, any mention of the Acadians. Groups across the country called for an apology. Today, they got it. CBC executives refused an interview, but in a statement said some people felt misrepresented, and for that we apologize. Our intention was never to offend anyone or any group, nor diminish the importance of any of the stories that were not included. The producers behind the series said they regretted offending anyone, but in this format and in a tightly packed 10-hour time frame, we necessarily left out huge swaths of history. But for some, without a plan to address the concerns, the apology doesn't cut it.
Until they make a genuine apology, I think the controversy will continue.
No. It isn't enough for Marie-Claude Riot either. She calls the show a slap in the face, ignoring the Acadian experience.
We don't feel that it's the right way to right a wrong. We feel that it's a misrepresentation of the importance of Acadians. And we, quite frankly, we still feel left out.
Left out here, too, at the National Historic Site of Port Royal in Nova Scotia. Historians say this settlement was founded 3 years before Quebec City, which the show depicts as the first permanent European settlement.
There's a story to be told, and we need that story told. And if CBC's not going to do that, then we'll have to find some other way to do that.
The mayor has already reached out to a filmmaker to look at creating their own television production. As for the CBC, the broadcaster says in addition to an apology, it will also create a space online to further discussion around the series. Stephanie Van Kempen, CBC News, Toronto.
Straight ahead, we'll take you inside a special school with a surprising student body. Judges only.
Earth Day has been organized from this office by young people using all the enthusiasm and techniques of publicity which were developed by the peace movement. They have been joined by many politicians, for no one opposes in principle a clean environment.
On Earth Day, we're going to be focusing the whole society's concerns upon the broad range of environmental issues that are coming up, to the whole series of ways that we are destroying the world that some of us really want to live in 30 years from now.
All we are saying is give us the chance.
They gathered in thousands here and tens of thousands there, but in our 136 countries, there were 200 million, the organizers said. But who could possibly count? In Europe, they bicycled. In Central America, they rallied. On Parliament Hill, there was a message from the man who wrote "Never Cry Wolf."
With the help of the Wolf Pack, I want you to pick up that message and bounce it off this building behind me. Now, let's go!
There may have been snow in the forecast and a cold wind blowing, but the drums were hot in Ottawa, even if the crowd was smaller than expected.
No, there's a lot of issues that forcing this thing maybe to the back seat, but I don't know, I still think it's pretty strong.
In Montreal, there was a march through the city.
It's important to remember, people, we are losing our Earth now.
In Toronto, hundreds took part in an Earth Day march, walking from Queen's Park to Toronto City Hall. Here, too, organizers admit the fight to clean up the planet is not easy, but it must be done.
Although the environment is under great stress, we at least can show some hope.
Earth Day sucks. There, I said it. Earth Day sucks.
He's not alone. There's a growing group online. It's not the message. That, Norman says, is good, especially when it involves educating the young about the mess their parents have left the planet in. Now he sees corporations using Earth Day to sell stuff, and he doesn't pull punches.
Earth Day should be every day. This 1 day per year stuff is garbage.
All we are saying is give us a chance.
A number of recent controversial court rulings have caused many Canadians to question just how well judges understand the laws on sexual violence. The idea of mandatory education has been a hot topic at a seminar for Canada's newest federally appointed judges. Alison Crawford got rare access to the meeting.
The signs say it all. Myths about women, sex, and consent, which appear to persist.
This is a concept anyone in a courtroom should know.
Even in Canada's courtrooms, when judges are supposed to know the law. In the last 18 months, Canadians have taken to the streets to vent about what they consider outrageous, outdated, and outright sexist judicial comments. Why couldn't you just keep your knees together? I am not convinced she clearly expressed her objections. She did not scream, she did not run for help. At no point did she ever mention this to a friend. Clearly, a drunk can consent. A possible solution, judge school, where CBC was given exclusive access. Canada's newest federal judges are learning the ropes, brushing up on the law, including Canada's sexual assault laws.
The continuing low reporting rate, the fact that very few cases go to trial.
Retired BC Supreme Court Justice Lynn Smith also addressed discredited rape myths. That honorable women scream and fight back, they don't freeze. That victims immediately tell police. That women who've had more partners are less credible.
It didn't matter how the girl was dressed. It didn't matter that she didn't physically, strenuously resist the sexual activity. She said no, she said stop, and she never said yes or go ahead.
Hey neighbor, don't drink too many of those. Remember, a drunk can consent.
Boy, you piece of...
Canadians have shared this video millions of times, getting a kick out of ridiculing judges for poor judgment. Chief Justice Neil Whitman says most judges strive to get it right.
There's education, and then there is an understanding, in other words, getting it.
Interim Conservative leader Rona Ambrose has introduced a bill that would require everyone who wants to be a judge to take in-depth training on sexual assault.
The training exists. I just want you to take it. Take it. It's there for you.
Some judges, though, feel mandatory education is a threat. Ambrose has no patience for the naysayers.
I say that's crazy. That's rubbish. It's ludicrous because the bill itself mandates lawyers who want to be appointed to the judge. So if you are a lawyer and you never want to be a judge, you'll never have to deal with this.
This year's federal budget includes almost $3 million for judicial education.
Justice Adele Kent hopes some will be invested in online education.
In the last year, it's become apparent that if we could offer some electronic resources to judges to watch in their chambers in sexual assault trials, how to manage them, rape myths and stereotypes, the law, as you heard about this morning, that would be helpful.
In a workshop after our cameras left the room, the new judges were asked what advice they'd give to a close female friend, relative, or coworker who'd been sexually assaulted and wanted to go to police to press criminal charges. For the longest time, no one said a word. Finally, when some did raise their hands, some said they weren't sure, and others said they'd only feel comfortable sending that woman to support services. Alison Crawford, CBC News, Ottawa.
Still ahead, this week's Viewpoint takes on high-tech incubators. When governments pour the money in, whose interests are served? But first, the new face of retirement.
I think work till you go.
Are baby boomers sucking the air out of their grandkids' job market? That's next on The National. First, look at the day's business numbers. The TSX dropped 3 points, no change to the dollar. In New York, the Dow lost 6 points. Price of oil went up 32 cents a barrel.
Showing off some skin has moved from the TV screens to the streets and now to the schools.
It's a hot day. It's very hot. A hot day.
Too hot for some anxious principals.
You know, it was causing a distraction, there's no question.
She sent home this note. Keep the underwear hidden. No exposed boxer shorts. No wayward bra straps.
I think that we're perverted. Like some guy will go, whoa.
From the archives of CBC News.
If a girl should know how to dress for school, I think it's up to them, really. And tight sweaters, well, they're not very good, I don't think. I'd rather see a girl wearing blouses and stuff like that.
Do you enjoy wearing miniskirts?
Yeah.
Well, I don't really prefer them on girls, but also I think it's just that it modernizes the way the girls dress.
The skirt rises up when you sit down, so you have to put your books something on your knees or something to hold it down.
I just don't like the idea of them wearing way up here. It looks, it's not right.
That was Barbara Emile getting the long and short of the miniskirt story.
School's back all over the country now. Did today's back-to-schoolers reject the dictates of the department stores? Here on What's New, we took a look at how kids actually went back to school this fall, and what we saw were students like these.
You can read a book in jeans, you can go to school in jeans, you can roll down a hill in jeans, you can do whatever you want in jeans.
In the late 60s, there was pressure on the schools to relax dress codes. Shorter skirts, pants for girls, and eventually jeans were allowed for everybody.
The freedom that the children have known for the past 15 years has been just a little bit too much.
The parents have decided to adopt a uniform this year.
They do seem to be more serious.
And we work harder because we look better.
Teachers don't really know whether uniforms make any difference to the children's schoolwork, but both teachers and parents hope the uniform is here to stay.
I guess I was brought up different than most kids. I just don't believe in wearing stuff that's vulgar, as my mother calls it.
A piece of film was supposed to have been cut to open this year's Festival of Festivals, but the organizers couldn't find any, so an old-fashioned ribbon was used instead.
This evening, the gala premiere belongs to a Canadian film, Ticket to Heaven. A number of limousines have pulled up with well-dressed people. Unfortunately, nobody seems to know who they are.
Despite the problems, after the film, it was party time, and there was everything you'd expect at a showbiz bash. Stars, booze, good-looking women, good-looking men, people dancing to the music of Martha and the Muffins, and more booze.
It's Warren Beatty night at the Festival of Festivals, where the spotlight shines on everyone. The ushers at the theater had their hands full. It was their job to make sure the fans and the stars didn't collide. But when the big black Continental pulled up to the curb, there was no stopping the autograph hounds.
I'm very proud of myself from restraining myself from attempting to wrestle him to the ground, because that's exactly what I wanted to do.
This was opening night, a gala for the North American premiere of Joshua Then and Now. There were Klieg lights and limousines, but there were also some charming down-home touches. The star, James Woods, arrived with his proud parents, who came in from Rhode Island for the event.
Now the oh-so-cool set have decreed Canada's little festival that could a must. That, of course, is Robin Williams, Claudia Schiffer.
It's the only film festival in the world where you see all of the most important films. You see a whole year come in advance.
As un-Canadian as it is to gloat, movie critic Roger Ebert says go right ahead.
Yeah, it's okay, Canada. It's okay. It's a real big, real good festival.
We decided when I turned 55, instead of packing it up and sitting on the lawn chair, we decided that we'd change.
Retirement used to be easy. At least the story we told ourselves about it was. Work hard for several decades, then kick back and enjoy the R&R. But even if that story ever was true, things have changed. We're living longer. The markets whack the savings. And work can still be such a satisfying part of life. So Duncan McHugh took a little trip to ask, just what is retirement anyway?
Georgetown, Prince Edward Island, a prime tourist destination. Well, maybe a bit sleepy in March, since a lot of the town's residents are snowbirds gone south for winter. But not Perry Gotel. He's too busy working, getting ready for those summer sightseers. He may be closing in on 60 years old, but he has no plans to slow down.
And sometimes when I walk by the mirror at the end of the hall, I don't recognize that person there because of this time thing. My mind and my body don't tell me that I'm 59 years old. I still have a long future ahead, and most of it's still undiscovered. That's the exciting part of it.
Gotel is the owner and operator of Tranquility Cove Adventures, a company that specializes in experiential tourism, giving people a chance to get a taste of life on the ocean. His deep-sea fishing trips are booked up months in advance. But this boat wasn't always hauling tourists. For most his adult life, Perry Gotel was a fisherman, like his father and grandfather before, and he loved it.
There was not one time that my feet hit the floor that I said, damn, I'm going to that wharf, I don't want to go. I always wanted to go, and never had an alarm clock.
But as good as fishing was for his mind, it was hard on his body. So Gotel and his wife decided it was time for the next chapter.
We decided when I turned 55, instead of packing it up and sitting on the lawn chair, we decided that we'd change, and I started Tranquility Cove Adventures.
Now, in the winter months, he's adding snowmobile guide to his list of business offerings. Call him an entrepreneur or a marketing genius. Call him a baby boomer if you like. Just don't call him a senior.
It hurts me. It does.
What's that stigma?
That you're washed up, you're done, you're watching the TV, you're on the clicker. No, I'm not there.
So is working tied up with that then? Like when you're still working, you're not washed up, you're not...
Yeah, and I might be brainwashed. I might be somebody that's totally brainwashed in this area, but I think work till you go.
Work till you drop. That's music to the ears of the Government of Canada. Because in just a few years' time, our economic growth could fall under 2% a year as more boomers retire. If more don't keep on working past the age of 65, our country's economy could be in trouble.
For the first time in Canada's history, there are more people over the age of 65 than under the age of 15. More people leaving the workforce than ready to enter it. Add to that the fact that people are living longer, and you can see why economists are churning out some pretty gloomy forecasts. But not here in the Maritimes. This part of Canada may have one of the oldest populations in the country, but out here, grey power rules.
The Maritimes give us a glimpse of where Canada is quickly heading. Almost 20% of the population here is over the age of 65. By 2040, it'll be 30%. That's why the government of Nova Scotia became the first province to create a department solely devoted to seniors. Deputy Minister Simon d'Entremont says it's time for an attitude change about retirement.
We're living 10 years longer than we were 50 years ago and 20 years longer than 100 years ago, and we still as a society perhaps act like 65 is a day where you transform from being to being a different person. In today's society, it seems that it's the minority of people who actually want retirement to be a day in their life. And for many people, if not most people, they want retirement to be a process of working less and retiring more.
German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck is generally credited for setting 65 as the official age of retirement back in the 1800s. Those days, hardly anyone lived that long, so it didn't cost the government much.
Imagine visiting yourself in the future.
100 years later, this successful ad campaign sold Canadians on the dream of retiring at age 55. Problem is, our average lifespan is now about 82 years. That makes Freedom 55 an expensive proposition.
When I was younger, I almost fell for it because you seen that and you thought, oh, it's so cool, 55 years old, you're still young, you can get out and see the world and do stuff. But that advertisement was a crock for most Canadians, really it was, for most Canadians.
Why was it a crock?
Because most people don't have a pension plan, or RSPs took a bad hit here, 10 years ago and lost 80% of them or whatever, and the cost of living is going up so much that it's not that you have to work, it's if you want to keep the lifestyle that you have, you do.
But work isn't always a lifestyle choice. For folks like Sheila Hogue of New Glasgow, Nova Scotia, it's a necessity.
Bye.
She's 70 years old and the volunteer coordinator at the Victoria Order of Nurses. She's worked here for 15 years.
What I like about it? Why don't you ask me what I don't like about it? Because there's nothing about it that I don't like. Except that I can't do more. I hear such sad stories, and there are so many women who are in my situation but not able to work. And this is Charlie shortly before he died.
Sheila's situation is pretty common. She was a young single mom with 3 kids in tow when she met the love of her life, Charlie Hogue. They raised the 3 kids together and bought the house she still lives in.
He made things happen for me like you would not believe. In the time we were together, I did more with him than I ever expected to ever do in my life. And yeah, he was such a good guy. God, I miss him. I miss him so.
Charlie had big plans for their retirement, but then he died suddenly, just 2 years before they put those plans in motion. Sheila needed to work not only for fulfillment, but to keep a roof over her head.
I have no plans for retirement. That's the truth. I want to stay in my home. I'd like to die in my home. We're headed out. This is a client that we're going to see.
Her life didn't turn out exactly as planned, but don't waste time pitying Sheila Hogue. Her job brings her in touch with seniors who struggle to pay bills.
Hi, Vera.
Hi, Sheila.
How are you?
Hi.
Being able to help seniors like 91-year-old Vera gives meaning to Sheila's life, makes work about much more than collecting a paycheck. Still, when she gets together with couples she and Charlie once socialized with, it's hard.
Some of them really close friends of ours, and they're all going on a cruise this week. My heart was breaking, I'll tell you. They were all, we're going to be doing this, we're going to do this. Yeah, you should come. You should make plans. You should retire, Sheila. You should come. And I said, you're all couples, And they said, oh, yeah, that's right. Well.
So there's the couple aspect of it that you said is makes it difficult for you to participate. Mm-hmm. Is there the financial aspect of it as well?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'd have to, to live their lifestyle, even as a single person, I would have to give up my home, and I have no pension. I work because I financially want to live in my home, and in order for that to happen, I need to work. Bottom line.
How long will a trap last?
If you put these traps inside, you shouldn't have any problem getting 10 years of them.
10 years?
Yeah.
Perry Gattell could afford to quit, but he's just getting going. Today, he's wrangled me into doing his work for him.
Every one of these heads, see that hole?
Yeah.
You got to put the twine through and come up and pull.
Tourists now pay him to coach them on how to make their own lobster traps so they can experience the life he left behind.
No, you went through the inside.
Business is so good, he's taken on 5 employees, a couple of them pushing 70.
I'll get it. Yeah, you will get it, yeah.
No doubt more skilled than me.
Why isn't it a benefit to you to hire seniors? Why is a 68-year-old and a 70?
Oh man, they never show up late. They don't come in with hangovers. They don't phone in sick. There's all kinds of reasons why they're amazing workers.
That may be, but many older workers can feel guilty about hanging on to jobs that could go to younger workers. That's a fallacy, says D'Entremont.
This theory is so widely believed that economists have given it a name. It's called the lump of labor fallacy, which implies that there's a fixed number of jobs in the economy, and if you give a job to someone, you take it away from someone else. Now, at the micro level, this is perhaps true. That an older worker's in the job, someone else can't be in that position. But at a macroeconomic level, we need all workers, and older workers have a lot of contribution, sometimes more spending power than their younger counterparts, and create more spin-off benefits.
That's what German car maker BMW discovered. They didn't want to lose their highly skilled workforce to retirement. So in 2007, they conducted a pilot project. They created an entire shift of workers 10 years older than average to see what the impact would be.
And they found that for £20,000 or $20,000 or $30,000, they made 70 small accommodations and increased their productivity by 7%, totally dispelling the myth that older workers are less productive.
Baby boomers are the biggest demographic wave to ever hit our country. By sheer force of numbers, boomers have changed just about every institution they've encountered. Now, it seems, they're set to change ideas about retirement. Like Perry Gattell, many just won't stop.
Oh, I'm gonna go until I drop, man. I love working. I really do. I love the challenge. I love meeting people. And no doubt I like the money.
Forget Freedom 55, as Canada ages and fast. Maybe forget retirement altogether. Duncan McHugh, CBC News, Georgetown, PEI.
Well, a couple of useful tips there. When we come back, another assumption about job creation comes under fire. Technology futurist Jesse Hirsch brings his viewpoint.
In Toronto today, nearly 1,000 women gathered. Women from kitchens, offices, factories, and schools.
We know very well that we're at the bottom of the economic and the political pile, but not for long.
International Women's Day commemorates an angry rebellion by women sweatshop workers in New York who walked off the job to win decent wages and working conditions. Today, the women's goals and demands are just as pointed.
There's no excuse in the world for us earning 60% of what men earn. That's an intolerable situation.
As we go marching, marching in the beauty of the day.
Is it frustrating to you that a lot of people are simply not aware that today is International Women's Day? A lot of women are not aware.
Well, sometimes it is frustrating, but on the other hand, the celebrations have been growing from year to year. I mean, to have 5,000 or 6,000 people out in the street in Toronto is quite a feat, let me tell you.
For participants, the demonstration is a declaration of hope and belief that a different kind of society is possible. They're here because they don't accept that women are naturally inferior, passive, and submissive. They don't believe women are born to be dependent. They don't think women are emotionally unstable, unable to make their own decisions.
20 years ago, graduates grappled with the idea of careers. These young women assume they'll have careers and more.
I want to try and have it all. I'd like to have an education and a job that I'm happy with.
We're not as radical, we're more equalists.
Like many young women today, these students say they're not feminists. On this International Women's Day, which celebrates the efforts of women to build a better world, they believe that world is here already.
Pop superstar Alanis Morissette's homecoming is a big deal, if not a bit overwhelming for the city that knew her when. You can forgive the good people of Ottawa for not seeing it. They remember Morissette as a teenage dance queen with big hair and frosted lipstick who sang at the mall. Today, at her first press conference since she unveiled her new look, sound, and record, Jagged Little Pill, Morissette was asked to explain what happened to the dance queen.
You know, the biggest changes that I went through personally were between the ages of 16 and 21, and I think it's inevitable it's going to come out in your music, so.
Despite some people's confusion at her radical musical makeover, Ottawa's mayor proclaimed today Alanis Morissette Day and handed over the key to the city.
This just sort of represents that the city that I grew up in, that I went through so many things in, is something that I don't want to really put in my past, really. I just want to make a peace with where I came from, and, I'm apprehensive to accept an Alanis Morissette Day. I'll take an Alanis Morissette moment.
She says her musical priorities and motives have completely changed.
Over the last 4 years, just learned how to write for my own reasons and write for myself, and as I said, it's pretty ironic that the moment I started doing that was the moment that most people related to it.
My name is Jesse Hirsch, and I'm a technology futurist, writer, and researcher. And I want to talk to you about what currently happens when governments pour money into supporting startups. Disruption is a word you hear a lot in the tech sector. It drives companies that seek to transform industries, as Facebook, Uber, and Airbnb have done. There's certainly no shortage of people hoping to create a disruptive company, but it requires money, and that's where incubators come in. Incubators are spaces designed to help create and grow a business. They offer educational resources, a place to work, and access to potential investors. Tens of millions of public dollars from all levels of government are being spent to support these incubators. But how do we know that they actually deliver? How are we measuring the jobs they're creating? And who's going to reap the benefit of all that public investment? In Toronto alone, there are now over 60 different incubators. British Columbia has about 20, Montreal has over 15. The hope is that this will lead to the rise of the next Nortel or BlackBerry. The federal government even uses the phrase high-growth businesses when describing their desired outcome. But this is not the reality of what happens to startups in Canada. For most of these companies, especially for the entrepreneurs who drive them, the main metric of success is the exit. That exit is the moment that a company sells out. Like when Snapchat bought the Toronto-based company that made Bitmojis for over $100 million. This is when the founders and early investors are able to leave the company and get a return on their investment. But how does this help the taxpayers who put up all that incubator money? What about the broader Canadian economy? Most of these exits mean that the ideas, innovations, and jobs don't stay in the places that incubate them. And even if some of these jobs stay, the ownership of these companies mean that the wealth does not. Because those exits benefit US tech giants like Google, Facebook, Snap, and Microsoft. Right now, Canada's incubator model is serving the interests of major American tech companies. It undermines Canadian sovereignty because the profits and intellectual property generated by these firms go south. But it doesn't have to be this way. Rather than help a few people get very rich, incubators could be used to help create thousands of small and medium-sized businesses. They can do this via the selection process, choosing who gets access to these incubators and how entrepreneurs are guided and nurtured. While these startups may not be destined for purchase by a tech giant, they'll still be able to be active and profitable participants in the Canadian economy. It's time to stop incubating dreams of a billion-dollar exit and start rewarding startups that want to stay. For The National, I'm Jesse Hirsch.
This afternoon in St. John's, Newfoundland, a young man named Terry Fox started running.
Many people have run or walked across Canada, but Fox hopes to be the first to do it with an artificial leg.
I got a lot of positive attitude, and I think I can do it.
He calls his running style the Foxtrot. After 25 days in Newfoundland, Terry had raised $25,000.
That song was commissioned by the Cancer Society, which had its own doubts when he started off. Now, as he pounds out the kilometers, the money pours in, most of it in cash.
He's got all the guts in the world. And I wish him all the luck in the world, too. And I hope he makes it.
What do you think of Terry Fox?
I think he's great.
He'll make it. He'll make it.
The run to City Hall, down University Avenue, took Terry by hundreds of people. It was an emotional moment for many of them.
I knew I was going to make 20 miles. When people were out there like that, it was incredible today.
We've seen him surrounded by crowds of supporters, but the crowds go home. Terry keeps running.
I'm stubborn and competitive, and I don't know, I really enjoy life. I enjoy challenges. I don't like people feeling sorry for me. I don't like pity, and I wanted to show these other people what I could do.
The National with Knowlton Nash.
Good evening. A story of incredible courage came to an end today at a news conference.
Yesterday I was running, and I had noticed a little bit of hardness in breathing, and I decided I had to go see a doctor, and it was discovered then that the cancer had spread, and now I've got cancer in my lungs, and
From one end of the country to the other, there has been a spontaneous outpouring of support for Terry Fox and cancer research. Rarely, if ever, have so many people been so deeply moved by one individual.
if it comes to the point where I'm told I'm going to die of cancer, I haven't got a chance, I've got to be able to face that. And
good evening. Terry Fox died this morning in a British Columbia hospital, 1 month before his 23rd birthday.
Well, he was a very brave boy, I must say, and I feel very sad about it.
Don't cry, love. It's all right. Don't cry, sweetie. It's all right.
I think he touched the hearts of a lot of Canadians, and they all really look up to him.
More than our sympathy, we would like you to express as well our profound gratitude for the gift which Terry gave to all of us, the gift of his own boundless courage and hope.
Canadians everywhere walked and jogged and ran to raise money for the fight against cancer.
He accomplished more in a few short months than most of us can hope for in a lifetime.
The wife of Canadian singer Michael Bublé says their young son is now well following cancer treatment. 3-year-old Noah Bublé was diagnosed with cancer last fall, prompting his dad to withdraw from all appearances, including hosting the Juno Awards earlier this month. At a news conference in her native Argentina, Luisana Lopelato said Noah's recovery is still a long process and that checkups continue. But the family's very happy and looking forward to the future. Before we go tonight, here's a peek at a special feature story Adrian Arsenault was working on for tomorrow night.
Okay, right here. What about this cop car here? Get out.
This is the Philippines, an Operation Double Barrel Reloaded. A war on drugs as ugly as it sounds.
What's going on here?
So now they're taking the body to the funeral parlor. And the family's going to follow.
All the silence of the night gone. His name was RJ. He was 16. The truth tellers of the Philippines, tomorrow on The National.
That's The National this Tuesday night. For news at any hour, you can always go to our website, cbcnews.ca. I'm Peter Mansbridge. Thanks for watching.